Well, the ceasefire is just a delay that will help Iran more than anybody else. And it's going to keep the Iranian people from getting a chance to actually overthrow that stinking government.
Welcome to Third Side Convo with your host, Bob Phipps. Your panelists today are Ted Johnson, Jeff Klein, Michelle Walters, and Larry Haber. And now, your host, Bob Phipps.
Welcome to Third Side Convo. Tonight, we are putting the Iran ceasefire under the microscope. Is this a real move toward peace or just another temporary pause in a conflict that never really stops? You know, let's be upfront. We've got a panel with some strong Jewish American perspectives tonight, both right and left. So you're going to hear smart debate rooted in real-world experience and a personal stake in these issues. We may not cover every angle, but we're not pulling any punches. So let's dig into the real question. Can we really have a ceasefire that means anything if one side wants to eliminate the other? Let's go. Ted, let's start with you on that.
Well, I personally believe that we have to understand if the president is telling us the truth on intel reports. And he just made a notion to Congress that he's going to cut off intel reports to Congress. He doesn't want anybody to know what's really going on.
Hey, Ted, Ted, I'm going to stop you now. That's a little more direct. We're not chaining Jeff in the right way. The president? Give me a break. I almost want to start over. Can you slam that sumbitch? Okay, I'm gonna start out with Larry. Let's talk about. We're not talking about one particular intelligence report. Give me a frigging break, Ted. We even had a briefing on this, Jeff. This will tell you how much fun we have. Larry, can you tell me about the Iran ceasefire? Does it mean anything?
No.
Why?
The Iranians, in particular, take things in the 100-year cycle, not today, not this week, this month. So the only reason we have a ceasefire is they got their ass whooped. That's it. Now we have to wait and see if regime change is possible, because that's the only way it's going to get solved.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty concise. Jeff, Ted's agreeing with him right there. I just don't know why Ted thought we were doing a different show. Jeff, you're new to this. What do you take to that question?
Well, the ceasefire is just a delay that will help Iran more than anybody else. And it's going to keep the Iranian people from getting a chance to actually overthrow that stinking government.
Okay. All right, Michelle, how do you understand it? We've got these three strong opinion people, and you're our common folk for the show. You know, just your everyday person. What do you see?
No, absolutely, an everyday person. And I look at this as a ceasefire is just a temporary solution to where no peace is not going to be accomplished. But I believe that with regards to our current administration and actions that have taken place, it is a method to ensure our safety as Americans in the future and the safety of Americans abroad. So I believe that it was a necessity. It was a necessity.
Hey, Ted, we've seen dozens of ceasefires throughout this region. Do they ever hold? Do they ever work?
No, not generally speaking, but you can go back presidents, you can go back thousands of years. This area has always been of great conflict. It goes back to the foundations of civilization, from the Persians through the Babylonians, Israelis. Yes, it's a constant strive for resources and subsistence and existence. And it based a lot of it on different religions clashing. And it's not going to stop, I don't think, in the next 3 days or 3 months or 3 years. Yeah.
Well, my question though is, I mean, you know, our primary purpose though was to enact and to ensure that they do not have nuclear capabilities along with long-term range missiles. How would you decipher on eliminating those things out of Iran without, you know what I mean, doing what we actually had to do in a current administration? How would you go ahead and try to ensure that we're going to have safety within our American people here and abroad, and as long as they were to maintain having those capabilities? How do you ensure our safety?
Well, the thing is, I don't think America is threatened by the missiles as much as Israel is, and which is our main component or proponent in the Middle East. So that's the issue. But it's also just setting up worldwide disruption of many key elements of our economies, which is oil. And so you have to be able to preserve some stability. Again, it goes back to, yes, money, money, money. It goes back to the fact that what's best regionally for the world changes weekly, depending on the political aims of people in Washington, D.C., as well as Tel Aviv, as around the world.
Okay.
But my question, though, comes back all the way back.
Hold on one sec. I got to let Jeff jump in on this one. He was about to lose it. Okay. Was it the oil issue that you were talking about, or what?
That was last time I checked. We were energy independent as of about 8 years ago. We don't care. We don't need Middle East oil anymore. Our allies do, but we don't.
Yes.
And their economies may depend on some of that oil, but not Iranian oil. That Strait of Hormuz oil, yeah, that matters. But I don't know what this ceasefire means. Are we in on the ceasefire, or is it just a ceasefire between Iran and Israel? Is this ceasefire to keep Iran's terrorists that they fund from attacking American bases or shopping malls or Six Flags? I don't know. Is that any part of this? What does the ceasefire mean? Is there a piece of paper that somebody signed, or is this just Trump? I'm sorry. Is this just administration?
Hit him! Ah! All right, Larry, can you give us some
You
reason?
said I'd do it, and I did it.
Yeah, okay. Give us some reasonable talk on that. What do you think?
Iran will continue, as long as the Ayatollahs are in power, to do what it's done before, and it's already reloading the Hezbollah and Hamas, etc. So you have to take the cancer out completely, and I don't know how quickly that's going to happen at this stage. It may happen tomorrow, and it may not happen for a year. Who knows?
Ted?
I got to point back to Jeff, but the oil issue is that Iran not only is a major sponsor of terrorism around the world, but they help the Russians get their oil out and avoid sanctions by shipping oil out of Russia. So that's where that part of the economy comes into it. So yes, it's our independence of oil does benefit us, but the world economy, not so much, especially the black market economy.
Yes, no, but it still brings it back to, though, I mean, my question is how do we sit there and ensure the safety, though, of the Americans here and the Americans, though, that we currently have in Israel? I mean, it's my understanding, though, that we have the second largest population of Americans in Israel aside from Mexico. I mean, it's my understanding that there's like 700,000 Americans that live there. How do we sit there and ensure their safety without taking precautions that are going to stop a regime that is bound and determined to eliminate us off the face of the planet?
Well, again, that goes back to what does that ceasefire really mean?
Nothing.
When the missiles were flying, they were shooting at civilians in Israel and military targets in Iran.
Yes.
But isn't that Israel's solution? I mean, that's an Israel problem, isn't it? I mean, they're not in America. If the Israelis are in America, it's an American problem. But it's Americans are in Israel, so it's an Israel issue, isn't it?
Well, Michelle's saying it's an American problem. If there's Americans there, usually
absolutely. If you're going to sit there and start targeting American citizens, though, over there in Israel, then absolutely that it is a problem. Like I said, I mean, we currently have the second largest population of American people that currently live in Israel. We absolutely have to sit there and ensure their safety.
That makes a lot of sense. I've never heard anybody throw that number out there, but
nice job, Michelle. Thank you.
Yeah, it looks
legitimate. A major cash for Michelle on that one. Let me tell you, if Jeff can learn something on this, and obviously Ted will be the one, by the way, Jeff, that double checks it later.
Absolutely.
Ted is our fact checker, just so you know. Okay. Exactly.
I mean, Israel is never the one that targets civilians anyway. And Iran absolutely does target civilians through their proxies as well as directly, we've learned. They're the ones funding the Houthis shut in Yemen and shutting down that waterway. I don't know why we're not going after them more. And I don't know why NATO's not going after them. I don't know why the Arab League isn't going after them to keep that waterway open. Not politically, just geographically and for trade. If they're closing the Strait of Hormuz that most of that oil flows through, it's hurting every one of their economies when those folks shoot rockets into the water at those ships. And it doesn't make any sense that the Houthis are allowed to do that.
Hey, Ted, let me ask you a question, because I kind of know it seems like already that Larry and Jeff are in agreement on this one. Do you see that we stopped too soon and that that the mullahs, that there needs to be a regime change? I hate to take it that seriously, but is that what's necessary?
No, I think that since October 7th and Netanyahu's response to that was to basically damage Hezbollah, take out Hamas. Meanwhile, the dictator in Syria has fallen. And so the barrier between Iran and Israel is very narrow. And Israel has just taken out the air defenses. So now, militarily, they are very subject. You're absolutely right. And then comes in now the nuclear issue. Yes, I think there is a teetering point. I don't think you can bomb your way into independence or make them independent, but of the theocratic rule. You need civilian uprising. Now, how we foment that now, I don't know. It may take a while. But yes, I think Iran is at a teetering point where an oppressive government can be dismantled and disregarded. It's very, I don't have a perfect solution for it, but I think the possibility exists, yes.
Got it.
I think we do it the old-fashioned way.
It all goes back to a president who will be unnamed from the 1970s that couldn't see the forest for the trees when all of this stuff started.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that it will get resolved one way or another soon enough. But then again, nobody knows at this point. Who would know probably the most is Mossad. They know what they've got going on the ground, and they probably could tell you right now it's next week, or it's not going to happen, or Trump screwed us. Whatever it is, they would know.
Well, that one wasn't so bad. Well, it wasn't so. Yeah, right. Okay.
But Larry's point is that Israel has had agents inside Iran for years and years. They've built up this system of a spy network to make their attacks even more effective. We don't have that. So
what you mean attacks where drones could go in the bathroom and just kill one person? That's an amazing thing with ID recognition. I mean, give me a break. Facial ID. Who would want to take one of those roles now, right? I'll be that one. No. All right, it's time for our break. Time for our break, and we want to hear from our sponsors. And literally, please go on Third Side Convo and subscribe. You see what fun we're having here and how we're learning. That's what this is all about. Please go on YouTube or on thirdsideconvo.com. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor.
Aw, Dad, my computer's slow again and I can't play my games.
Call Your Computer Solutions today, and we will scan for viruses and clean that computer up remotely and make it fast again. Our phone number is 407-826-0810.
Thanks, Dad. My computer's fast again. Now I can do my homework. Thanks for calling Your Computer Solutions at 407-826-0810. The Tibia Show would like to thank Boggy Creek Airboat Adventures for being one of our sponsors. I got to go on an airboat and saw a real gator. I even got to go to the gem mine and mine for some gems. We ate a steak dinner at the restaurant and even got some gator bites. If you want to have a blast with the entire family, I suggest you go to www.bcairboats.com right now. Get your tickets today. The website again is bcairboats.com.
Welcome back. Before we go any further, Michelle had a special request to kind of shift gears for a moment and talk about a subject that's hitting closer to home for a lot of people right now, the rise in anti-Semitism. Now, both here and abroad. Michelle, what was on your mind about that issue?
What was on my mind about this particular issue, and I think that we should change the show called Educating Michelle, along with my dog in the back. But I'm wanting to have a better understanding and appreciation of why there is so much anti-Semitism against the Jewish people. From here in the United States to abroad to why is it these people have been persecuted since the beginning of time, and I am trying to get a better basis of an understanding on why that exists.
Larry,
Well,
you want to
so
start
one
it?
of
I'll
the-
go. You're going to go.
I'm sorry. So
Good.
one of the roots of anti-Semitism happened when the Jews were kicked out of Israel, out of the Holy Land, and let into the major countries in Europe. And
When
so
was that, Jeff?
these new people showed up, and they looked different, they dressed different, and they kept to themselves. And so there was immediate mistrust and fear of the other. And so let's say some Jews moved in nearby, you brought them a coffee cake. I'm doing a little bit of anachronism there, but you brought them something to eat to be friendly. They couldn't eat it because it wouldn't match their diet. They didn't know if it matched their dietary practices.
Oh, sure.
Dressed different. They were standoffish because they did not trust you. They spoke a different language. So immediately you didn't trust them because they were strangers. And
What year
so
were
was
they
the
kicked out of
Indian.
Israel? What year were they kicked out of Israel? Or
Which
when,
time?
roughly?
the Romans kicked us out in
Oh.
70 AD.
Okay.
That was
Babylonians was
one of the
586
times.
BC.
And then a big part of Europe kicked us out of all those countries, and that's how we wound up in Poland. There was that whole thing that happened in the Middle Ages.
Eastern Europe, right.
That's where the King of Poland called us to come to his country because he wanted more education and sophistication in his country, and that's how that became a big thing. But the anti-Semitism was because we were different, and things like the money stereotype, or because we weren't allowed to own land and we weren't allowed to have a lot of the trades, so we couldn't get into the journeyman programs and apprenticeship programs. But we were merchants, so we had ready cash,
Right.
and
And
that's how
therefore
we became
bankers.
money lenders.
Yeah.
You got
Larry,
We could loan money, and
okay, I'd like
Christians
to.
weren't allowed to charge
I'd like to hear
interest.
from Larry. Larry, I'd like to hear from you on this one. You're kind of sitting there
Yeah.
just smiling.
No,
and-
I'm. That's history for us. It's not always history for other people, or it's strong enough for other people to say, so what? We get that. Most Jews get that if we've been involved. As you guys know, but Jeff, you may not, most of my family lives there. My parents were married in Tel Aviv, etc. I have a very strong connection to Israel my whole entire life. And yet to try to explain to people what that really means over thousands of years, it's like talking to the Armenians, okay? And telling them hey, you guys like Turkey? I mean, and then 99% of the people in this country would not know what that meant. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's just because we don't teach that, we don't learn that, and so forth. I don't try to profess to say to everybody, you need to know this, 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 and this. I try very hard to say, I've got a moral compass, and that's where mine goes. That's it.
Hey, you just piqued Michelle's
something
interest.
else
What does that statement mean, though, that you did say, so that you can't just throw that out and not explain it?
Well, yeah, no, absolutely. And
The
I'm just
turkey
being
thing.
wide
No,
of-
I
of
want
the
from
dis-
Larry. What does
with
that
the-
turkey thing mean? You were talking
is
about
the-
the turkey. You said the turkey, the example that nobody else understands what that
Turkey and
means.
Armenia?
Yes.
World War I, 3 million Armenians killed.
Right. That's why my mother always used to refer to the starving Armenians, is what I remember growing up with.
Yeah, and it's a real thing even today in terms of the hostility. Armenia still is not quite ready with Azerbaijan, even though they got their asses kicked not long ago. What people don't realize is the skirmishes, the wars, the Kurds in Iraq, are they really going to separate at some point, which they keep, they basically have already, but nobody wants to talk about it. Nothing's resolved in the Middle East. Nothing will get resolved.
No.
You just hope that you can get through one day to the next, or 1 year to the next at this point.
Well, and the Armenians are one of the few people who have a legit genocide that they can
Right.
My gosh, yeah.
like we did.
Find them all and kill them all.
Well,
Exactly.
and I didn't
100
know,
years ago.
my mother used to refer to the starving Armenians. I didn't know they were Jewish. Thank you. Ted, you want to jump in?
No, they weren't. They're not.
They're
not.
These things can
They're
be
not?
traced back to the
They're not.
British.
Absolutely not.
Mostly.
Thank you.
I'm sorry for interrupting. A lot of the Mideast problems can be traced back to the British the way they drew up lines when they left, after colonizations, after they left, like they split the Kurd tribe right in half between Turkey and Iraq. Those type of conflicts between Sunni and Shia and all that stuff comes down to borders that were arbitrarily deigned by the British as they left. So,
and they did a great job in Kashmir with Pakistan and India too, didn't they?
They did a great one there as well. Absolutely. So, and it was done haphazardly. Like we're getting the hell out, and good luck, pal. See ya.
So, and the other thing that's unique about anti-Semitism today is where else in the world do people blame the country somebody came from, or blame the people who live in America, for example, on what the country they came from is doing? Does anybody blame Italians in America for something that Italy does?
Right.
Or, I mean, do we storm the Chinatown because the Chinese are persecuting the Uyghurs? No, we don't.
Right.
But they riot in a Jewish neighborhood because Israel invades Gaza. It doesn't make any sense if you think logically or with common sense.
No,
but
absolutely.
for whatever reason, all over the planet, if Israel does something, people blame their local Jews for it.
Well, and that's what I'm wondering, though. I mean, is that where it's coming from when you see some of the anti-Semitism here within the United States, where, certain, religious temples and things that are being bombed? How is it that these young people even have any form of an understanding of where their hatred even comes from?
They don't have to understand. They've already been programmed in our lovely schools. They have their own view. They're
actually,
That's not going to change quickly.
Bad education. It's miseducation. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, Qatar has spent billions of dollars on bad education or on lying to young Americans in our universities about what's going on.
Now,
that's a big part of it.
I'll give them credit, though. They're smart. They, like the Chinese, they're putting their money on education in the younger groups by the sponsorships, the professorships, the endowments, and so forth. So I don't blame them for doing what they're doing. We just shouldn't be accepting of it. That's all.
You're saying
and Israel's terrible at
being infiltrated by a bunch of anti-Israeli academians?
Not anti-Israeli, anti-Western, Bob, like California. I'm not Bob.
Like Ted.
You're an expert on California.
Like California, anti-Western.
You're a real expert.
Yeah,
real expert.
All right. All right. Well, let's go ahead and let's finish that segment. And what we'll do, please, again, subscribe, YouTube, thirdsideconvo.com. We're now on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I mean, it's just the place to go to learn something, as Michelle will tell you. All right. But we'll see you back after a word from our sponsors.
Corona Cigar Company is your one-stop shop for all your cigar needs. Whether that's a brand new humidor, a box of those new cigars you've been waiting for, a top-of-the-line cutter or lighter, a place to enjoy the finest cigars and spirits with friends, or the only cigars grown right here in the Sunshine State, we've got you covered. Come visit one of our retail locations for the ultimate cigar experience. Visit us online at coronacigar.com.
Oak Ridge Gun Range is a family-oriented shooting range that has been in business for over 30 years. They specialize in basic firearm training and offer numerous services such as consignments, gun trades, gunsmithing, and concealed weapon classes. I even got my training for gun safety at Oak Ridge Gun Range. Great customer service, and firearm safety is what they do best. So find out more at oakridgegunrange.com.
Welcome back. Now, I want to know just kind of quickly, we're getting our last segment here. Is there any concern that anyone has that this could become a wider conflict? And if so, Russia's kind of distracted right now. You got China out there. There's some ties and all that. Is any concern from anybody about getting to be a wider conflict? I mean, the bombs went in pretty quickly. Ted, we'll start with you.
Yeah. I actually think there is one. I think Larry said it best, is that, Iranians as well as the Taliban, they think not in 5 minutes, they think in 5 years, 50 years. And I think there's no good reason to understand that 5 years from now, some major explosion will happen someplace in the world and it'll be blamed on America for what they did in Iran, something like that along. I think that this is just another example of the ongoing skirmishes that relate back to economics as well as religion, politics. So, yes, I think there's a real problem hanging in the air. It's not going to get better.
Jeff, is this another thing that America can be blamed on?
I think it's going to more likely that we're going to just see more homegrown attacks here, like the guy in D.C. who drove to D.C. to kill Jews, the wacko in Colorado who tried to burn people up with a homemade flamethrower, and I don't understand. Again, the people who covered it as journalists, they lose their journalism card for talking about the guy attacks old people at March, and they left Jews out of those headlines, and shame on them, because that's what that attack was all about, attacking Jews. It was not about attacking old people.
No, it showed up. It showed up in the 14th paragraph. You didn't read far enough.
It was definitely a Muslim Jewish thing. The stories I saw.
Yeah, I mean, and we've got to call these folks out. We got to shine a light on hate and make sure that people understand what's going on.
You can dissipate hate between religious groups. How can we do that?
That's the hard part. How do you? I mean,
Say that again, Ted.
How do you dissipate hate between religious groups?
Well, first of all, if you don't teach them to hate as children, because hate is a learned behavior.
Yep.
And I wasn't taught to hate. I was taught that that people are different and there's no reason to hate them. Yeah. I was raised not to hate, and I don't start off hating somebody. They've got to earn it. and that's why I understand what's happening in Gaza, and that there's a war against Hamas, not the Palestinian people. You can be pro-Palestinian and understand that war needs to happen to get the last 50 hostages back. And screaming for a ceasefire there will not get those hostages back. And it won't free anybody either. People keep talking about there is no occupation. In the 90s, the West Bank became Palestinians got land in the West Bank that they run. In 2005, they got land in Gaza that they run. Israel isn't occupying anything anymore, unless you disagree with the treaties that those folks signed, which some people do. But again, there are things that people do wrong on both sides. But there's no occupation. There's no apartheid. There's no genocide. There's no starvation. I mean, there's so much of this is predicated on lies.
How do you get the groups, religious groups, to stop hating each other?
Larry, you got any thoughts?
History will always show that the only way that changes is when one group defeats the other convincingly. And that's all.
Well, people sit down without having wars. ADL has education programs that work when educators are willing to be in the schools. They work in
it's working in France right now. It's certainly working in the UK. It's certainly working in a lot of places. It isn't working. You're either a homogeneous society like Japan, or you end up with conflict all through history.
When you walk kids in elementary school through a Holocaust museum, they grow up not hating other people. When you take a group of Palestinian kids to Auschwitz, you change their minds and their lives.
Okay, this is another time and subject, Bob.
Oh, no. We're getting near the end anyway, so don't worry. But I think actually Jeff's point is very good in that we've got to get them young. I mean, if some of the schools you hear about over there
say that all the time, Bob.
What's that?
You say that all the time. Got to get them when they're young. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So that was an okay thing to say, but that's it.
No, that was the joke, Bob. Sorry.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, all right.
Bob, how can you teach it when you have the 10 Commandments on the wall at every elementary school in Louisiana? How can you teach that?
And whose 10 Commandments are they? Because mine are different
There you go. Yeah. As I'm sure the Muslims may have 10 commandments. I don't know. But
All right, guys.
those are different as well.
Whatever's on the Quran.
All right, when I'm getting yelled at by Larry, we're going to bring the show to a close, and I'm just teasing on that. But listen, as we wrap up tonight, okay, let's remember, behind every headline, every ceasefire announcement are real people, families hoping for peace, communities living in fear and uncertainty. Whether it's the threat of renewed conflict or the rise in anti-Semitism here at home, these aren't just political issues. They're personal issues that affect lives. So if there's one thing we can agree upon, it's that honest conversation matters, and it's standing up against hate and violence, wherever it comes from. It's everyone's responsibility. Thanks for being with us, and let's keep pushing for a world where truth and empathy lead the way. We'll see you again on another episode of Third Side Convo. Thank you.